And so we're always thinking about it, whether we're in the health meetings, where we're in partnership now with Luton and Bedfordshire, and that's really important for us to also think about where innovation can happen there, whether it's housing, where actually what we're looking to do, be a carbon neutral by 2030 or carbon negative by 2050. Well, you can't do that without including the council's own housing stock, but also how do we support everybody else to make those improvements.
It's not normal within local authorities, is it?
Well, I mean, it can be. It's just about leadership, isn't it? It's about, and we have, I can't say this enough, we also have a really good group of officers who also completely are signed up to our vision of Milton Keynes. So we're all working in the same direction, and pulling together that Strategy 2050 document, I think really gave officers the confidence to have some long-term planning issues that was well beyond the election cycles.
Okay. I'm going to bring the rest of the panel on up and to find out what their reflections are on what you've said and what they're doing there. But I'm also going to ask you what your most heroic failure was. Maybe think about that. Right, let me introduce Dan Clark, Strategy and Partnerships at Cambridgeshire County Council. Dan, welcome. Where are you, Dan? Yes, you're there, Dan. Yeah, sorry, there. And Llewellyn Morgan, Innovation Lead at Oxfordshire County Council. Welcome, Llewellyn. Rajinder Sharma, Partnerships and Business Development Manager at Padaris. Padaris is, correct me if I'm wrong, transport planning technology. And also Carl Pittham, Commercial Manager for Smart Junctions at Vivacity, which is an AI-based technology to optimize transportation solutions.
Traffic signals.
Traffic signals around there. It uses AI technology to take information from CCTV, I think. Let's start with Dan. Dan, from a Cambridgeshire perspective, listening to what Emily's said there, I mean, give us, I suppose, a brief exploration about how you at Cambridgeshire are seeing transport tech really coming to life, and give us some real examples of the way that that Emily has done about how you're moving forward with that.
Yeah, sure. So we think that technology and innovation presents some real opportunities for us to kind of support the wider transport program. Cambridge's got a lot going on at the moment, so we're planning on significantly expanding our bus network. We are making significant investments in infrastructure, and at the moment we're actually consulting on a congestion charge. So we're looking at how technology can support those wider programs. Very similar to Emily, we've got a lot of work going on looking at how things like autonomy could potentially support the public transport network. So we're not so interested in driverless cars, but really driverless public transport that could help extend the network, operate in hours when traditional forms of public transport may not work, and things like first, last mile. A big kind of concentration on data and how we can use data to shift behaviors. So data feeding into public transport information, making sure that we've got the very best public transport information we can, linking up different parts of the transport system, train, bus, and new technologies that we're seeing adopted in cities like e-scooters to make journeys seamless and easy for people to take, so really shifting their behaviors. And looking at things like freight. So, how can we reduce the impact of freight on our cities and help us achieve some of our objectives around, decarbonising, net zero, and reducing the amount of demand on the network.
Do you recognise those 3 points that Emily mentioned? The ability to say yes, learn from your failures, and engage your communities. Is that good at the heart of your mantra?
Yeah, absolutely. So, our city is open for companies that want to come in. We'll help and work with them, particularly if it aligns with our vision. We've got Viva City on the panel today. So when they were a very young company, they deployed their first sensors in Cambridge. We've worked with them over the years. We've now done an at-scale deployment of Viva City cameras, and we're part of their Smart Junctions program.
Okay.
So, from them coming in, using the city as a test bed, we're now actually commercializing and rolling out in a kind of business as usual manner their technology.
Okay, well, as you mentioned, Carl, just give us a few words on, having worked with Cambridgeshire, what for you is vital when you're working with a local authority or a region to actually drive success and drive your innovation? What do you need to see?
Yeah, well, I think Dan has very eloquently put it there. I think that the ability to embrace new opportunities, new ways of doing things. And I should say, actually, we're talking about innovation here from a tech point of view. There are lots of other ways you can innovate, behaviour change, and even quite creative ways of using budgets. But the ability to embrace that, we want to do something different, we want to try things, the ability to say, well, yep, it may not all go to plan, but actually for us, building that relationship at a very deep level right across the council, from the technicians who are going to be working day to day right up to the politicians. And so everybody's on board, they understand what we're trying to do. And then when you get those bumpy points on the road where you think, actually, that's not quite what we thought would happen, how we're going to resolve it together, that's really important at that point. And then openness and honesty about what might work and what the limitations might be as you go through.
Emily, you're nodding vigorously there in agreement, or is that your experience?
Absolutely. When you're willing to be an innovation test bed, you have to be willing to say, well, it's not all going to go right from the start, but you have to have that open dialogue. And actually, and I don't want to speak because I know some of the speak for them, but I know some of the companies are in the room. But actually, that's quite a good challenge back to the company and saying, this isn't working for this reason. How do we resolve it? The residents are reporting back this, and so actually, when you look at a test bed of the size of Milton Keynes or of the size of Cambridge or wherever it might be, you're actually looking at a huge amounts of different types of geography and huge amounts of different types of people. And where else can you get that rather than in a live test situation?
Yeah. Llewellyn, give us a perspective from Oxfordshire, and maybe also reflect on, does it require a local authority to have enlightened cabinet officers like Emily on the case?
I think you can only deliver innovation if you are really well supported from your cabinet members. And thankfully in Oxfordshire we have been, both the past administration and the current administration as well. They've been very interested in what we do and very supportive of what we do, and part of the reason why we started. And I think that's partly because in Oxfordshire you could see the opportunity that was available to us, but we weren't always grasping that. We have Oxford University on the doorstep and some amazing companies, and if you look a few years ago, we weren't really working with them as well as we could have. So our role has been to try and work with them more. And so I always think part of our job and our team is to both innovate to tackle some of our biggest challenges, and that's why we started with transport, but also it's economic development. It's driving inward investment and growth out of Oxfordshire, and I think we've done a pretty good job in some sectors like the connected autonomous vehicle sector, and we've grown that and helped to make Oxfordshire really strong in that sector. And that's not necessarily, as Dan says, just for making sure an individual car can drive itself. It's all the spin-off benefits from that. Most of the benefits we get are around data and insight. And the approaches to learning, we've all learned along the way of how we're going to safely do something completely new and learn how to do that and create regulation with government, with the Law Commission. And that's things that you can then take into other sectors. So we're doing that now with UAV and manned aerial flight, and even someone mentioned it before, eVTOL. Had a discussion yesterday about that. There are things that I never thought I'd be talking about a few years ago, but those are big considerations.
So is it getting easier within a local authority like Oxford to have those, to suddenly start talking about eVTOLs?
Yeah, because
why is that? Why? What's changed?
Well, because we've learned about how to manage the risks. I think innovation is perceived as risky, but not doing anything is riskier than doing something, which is what I try to explain to people who try to think that we shouldn't do anything. Yeah. And all you have to do is actually understand how you manage the risk, and you can only do that now in the modern world, particularly in transport that's so deregulated, privatised, in a collaborative partnership. Okay.
Regina, would you agree with that? I mean, is your experience that you are seeing local authority, the local authority, public sector being more willing to embrace risk and new ideas?
I think the sort of recent sort of events, what's happened in the last 2 to 3 years, the pandemic, working from home, more hybrid working patterns, the sort of the pressure that local authorities had as a result of the national bus strategy, the sort of bus service improvement plans there to provide in a short space amount of time, local transport plan consultations taking place, network reviews. This has fundamentally kind of changed the way we look at transport planning. You know, no longer can it be just seen as something that the traditional ways of just huddling around a table, drawing lines on a map is going to work. The factors have changed, and so this has put a lot of pressure in terms of local authorities who have both been challenged both on capability and capacity, both in terms of resources, lack of time, with lots of ideas, but difficulty in kind of developing those ideas. And I think this is where sort of technology, not just sort of like ours, but just technology itself has to be embraced in terms of empowering local authorities to be able to do the same, more work with this less resources, being able to engage better with external stakeholders, be they public transport operators, be they sort of site developers, and the development of new skills and knowledge, really.
Because I imagine a lot of it is a cultural issue, because you and Carl, presumably you're in organisations where you naturally embrace failure as part of the journey. I mean, how do you get local authorities, maybe Emily, you can comment on this, how do you get local authorities to change that mindset towards embracing failure as a part of that journey?
Yeah, interesting word, failure. I mean, for all of us, it's how we learn, right? It's how children learn. By doing things wrong and then finding out there's a better way of doing it. And so absolutely it's part of the journey. But I think I was very interested in the poll that was running earlier, and that innovation was quite a long way down the list, and that budgets were a long way